Welcome to the last session of the day in Stream 2, Looking Through the Lens of Diversity. I am Liz Pia, a volunteer with Abuse Hurts, moderator for today's session. If you are a parent, a grandparent, or a caregiver, you will want to listen to our last speaker, who is Lynda Harlos. Lynda will be speaking about supporting victims of sex crimes, addressing stereotypes and lessons learned about supporting those in need. If you are in the wrong session, please navigate to the session you are looking for through the menu on the left of the screen. Click the sessions button and then click on the session you would like to attend. But I hope that you attend Lynda's session today. If you have any questions, we would like to ask Lynda at the end of the session. Please use the chat section. Lynda is a sex trafficking prevention educator. She is both a speaker and an author, a mother of a sex trafficking victim. Lynda endeavors to help families educate themselves in the hopes of preventing victimization. Volunteering with many organizations, including Victim Services, Covenant House, Rising Angels, Courage for Freedom, and more, she understands and tries to help both the survivors and those in the families of the survivor to learn coping skills and alleviate the guilt that comes from being victims. Lynda has done many interviews to spread awareness with CBC, CTV North, 360 Kids, National Council of Jewish Women of Canada, the Toronto Star, and many more. You can check out the work Lynda does, as well as watch her training videos on her website or YouTube channel, both called parentwithpurpose.ca. Welcome, Lynda, and thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Liz. I'm very humbled and I'm honored to be here today, and I want to thank all of the organizers of this event for putting together such an amazing event and for inviting me. My name is Lynda Harlos. As Liz has said, I am a sex trafficking prevention educator, and because of such, I will be using that word sex trafficking a lot today, but in most cases, everything that I'm talking to you about today is true for sex trafficking, any sexual assault, and for abuse. The victims of all of these deal with the issues that come from these crimes themselves and from society believing that they all fit into a stereotype and they treat them as such. And today my goal is to help you see that the victims are just that. They're victims, regardless of their status, where they live, the color of their skin, or their education. So let's get started. My passion on this subject comes from a very personal story, as my daughter was gang raped at a party, became pregnant due to that rape, and then about 1 year later got trafficked. However, she decided that she wasn't going to let the tragic crimes that were committed against her make her bitter. And instead, she's done everything she can in her power to let these make her and the world better. My daughter was determined that by telling her story to young people in schools across our region, that it would give the young people a way to get some of their power back that was stolen from her. The power she was not aware that had even been taken from her. The power to not allow anyone to use, abuse, or manipulate you or make you feel unworthy. She now understands and teaches youth that the only way to prevent sex trafficking abuse, such as rape or being sex trafficked, is by learning what it looks like, who the traffickers are, but more importantly, that you as an individual have every right to use your voice to say no and to stand up for yourself. She also created a sense of well-being while she was educating them, making sure that each of them were aware that they were amazing human beings, even when and if they screw up, make a mistake, or did something they know they shouldn't have, helping them understand that a mistake is just that, a mistake, and you can ask for forgiveness and move on, that tomorrow is a new day and you have a fresh start. Additionally, telling her story helped heal a lot of her own inner demons while giving her the sense of righting a wrong that was committed against her. She was aware that if others could hear the story as it happened to her and why, she could potentially save them from the same fate. So by following her example, as the parent of her, which is a sex trafficking survivor, I have learned a lot as to why this happened to her, what we missed as the parent, what we should have been more educated about, and additionally, then passing this information at the appropriate time to our children. And so like my daughter, and with her blessing, I now spend my time helping other adults who have any children in their lives from the ages of 2 to 25 to learn from my mistakes. So hopefully this doesn't happen to anyone else. And one of the issues that I struggled with on a daily basis when my kids were teens is why they seemed to make so many unwise decisions. We had taught them right and wrong, a moral code and decency, and what to look out for in life that could cause them harm. So why did they seem to have not heard or listened to anything we tried to teach them? Why did my daughter go to that party, whereas where her parents knew nothing about it? A party where she only knew the person who took her. And why did she accept a drink from someone she didn't know? All things we had taught her not to do, and yet it was as if she'd never heard any of it. And or, as some teens do, she knew it was dangerous, and that was actually part of the appeal of doing it. It wasn't until I started learning about sex trafficking, what it really is, and why it happens to so many that I learned the truth about this one fact, and that is that the brain is not fully developed until the age of 25, with impulse control being the last thing to develop, and therefore that is the reason you will hear so many parents say, I know they knew better. Why did they do that? Understanding that they are not always capable of dealing with impulses in a mature way, we are the ones responsible for their well-being. And yet the struggle for all parents is so real. How can we keep them safe and yet allow them some freedoms to become adults? It is one of the toughest gray areas that we as parents have to deal with. Although allowing my daughter to go to that sleepover at the age of 17 seemed like a relatively safe thing to do. Having been introduced to the parents, as is our role for all sleepovers, I ignored my intuition on my opinion of the parents because on the surface they seemed okay, and I just thought I had been overprotective. My daughter hid the fact that the parents were actually huge party people themselves, and they had in fact allowed the girls to get drunk even before allowing them to then go to the party. So my point here is to please trust your intuition. But yes, we do need to learn how to allow them to grow up, become adults, but at what cost? Making mistakes is usually a great lesson, but it can also cause a lifetime of trauma. The most important lesson here is that understanding the brain and why our young people do some very crazy and, let's be honest, dumb things. This will allow us to be more prepared to help navigate them through this with more wisdom and hopefully more patience. But here is some great news. You are already on the right path because you've taken the time out of your very busy schedule to attend a Hope conference. And that is such an amazing gift you are giving to yourself and to your loved ones. And one of the best ways to help protect yourself and your loved ones is to keep the lines of communication open. And I know a lot of the speakers today were talking about some similar things. Most victims, especially sexually assaulted victims, need to have that safe place to come and talk and to share their story without judgment. A place that even if they did do something wrong, such as my daughter going to that party, that we never throw it back in their face. What they don't need is someone saying to them, I told you that if you dress like that, you'd get assaulted, or saying something like, so why did you do that? What did you do to make this happen to you? Because a victim is a victim, and no matter what they did, what they said, or what they wore, if they were sexually assaulted, it was not their fault. The second way to help protect both you and your loved one is to educate yourself. You being here today is a great start on helping to accomplish that. I have free monthly workshops that you can come and attend that will help educate you on domestic sex trafficking and what abuse might look like here in North America. I'm sure many of the other speakers have platforms as well, and you should be checking them out. Trafficking and abuse we delve into who is doing the trafficking online and who's doing the abuse, who the traffickers are, who the abusers are, and who they target, what makes our loved ones easy targets, and what are the potential red flags that we should be looking for in order to spot that potential danger before it escalates into an attack or an assault. And additionally, I present parents and caregivers the tools needed to help them keep those lines of communication open. As well, we teach age-appropriate consent. And although all of this is great information and very much needed, today that is not what we're going to be learning about. We're going to ask a different question today. And today our workshop is going to answer the questions, why? Why do the traffickers and abusers do what they do? Seeing as this has become such a hot topic lately, why is sex trafficking still such a problem? Why do traffickers and abusers get away with these crimes so effectively? And lastly, why don't those that are trafficked leave? If they're not tied up, why don't they just walk out the door? I know this is a heavy subject and one that is loaded with a lot of heartache, a lot of sadness, a lot of anger. So how is answering all of these questions going to give us hope? Understanding the why, we will then be able to see options. We can discover possibilities of ways to avoid these crimes, ways we can look down the road and see the destruction that is coming and be equipped to leave that road and get on a different path, and to teach our young people, our loved ones, how to do that as well. We can have hope that our loved ones will become healthier in their decisions of who they let into their lives and why. Decisions where we can help them and or teach them to think through all the pros and cons so that they can make better choices. Discovering the why these crimes happen allow us to take the power back for both ourselves and our loved ones. And additionally, discovering why also allows the victim to understand that what happened to them was in fact a crime, and that no matter what others might say, or even what they might think about themselves, it is a crime that was committed against them. And again, it's not their fault. So let's delve into the whys. Why do traffickers and abusers do what they do? Although not always the case, many times a person is just repeating a pattern, a way of life. They lived in a home where abuse was happening. They lived with someone who sold others for money and or drugs, and they watched, they lived, they learned from the authority figures that were in their lives. Therapists understand that one of the hardest things to overcome as human beings when it comes to our mental health and overall well-being is breaking old cycles. Even simple cycles of stress eating or biting our nails. These are things that we may have picked up from our parents, and we struggle with being able to break those habits, these cycles, and to make a choice to change them. In the case of mental health or physical abuse, the issue becomes a much more insidious concern. The way of life is so ingrained in the victim that they become the assaulter. The victim becomes the attacker. The primal law of eat or be eaten is ingrained in all of us, especially when it comes to survival. And if a victim doesn't know any better or cannot be bothered to try and change, they will eventually become the same person to others that they lived with. So that is one of the primary reasons why traffickers and abusers do what they do. They're just repeating a cycle. But traffickers are the worst form of abusers, as they abuse you physically, emotionally, and mentally. And they benefit from their abuse in monetary ways, which makes the main and obvious reason most traffickers do this is for the money. So let's quickly tackle the question of why is sex trafficking still such a problem? When we all learned about the Epstein Island story, what did you think? Did it outrage you? Or did you say, oh, well, the rich are allowed to get away with that kind of thing? It was a topic of conversation for a very long time. And yet whether we were outraged or think, hey, it's just something that happens, the one thing we didn't ask a lot is why they felt they had a right to misuse another person, especially a young person. How do we not understand that we have a problem in our society when so many feel that sex is just a casual thing? You don't get outraged or give it that much thought, nor think it's wrong to buy sex, because somehow we've all grown to believe that it is just the way of life. Sex is a necessity, and hey, it's the oldest profession in the book, right? So why have we gotten to the point where we believe sex is a commodity, like a candy bar that you can buy, sell, or steal? We have a society that has done everything we can to become inclusive, and we are outraged when somebody uses words that offend people, or if someone is not being understanding of another person's personal issues or choices, such as mental health or diseases, gender or sexual orientation. But we don't have the same outrage as a society on sexual behavior as a whole. In fact, we've stepped over that line and crossed over into a realm of allowing sex to be a very casual thing that everyone can have, whatever they want, whenever they want. How do we teach respect of others and their bodies and their space and their relationships when we encourage everyone to swipe left or right? But wait, what if we started teaching our youth that sex should be earned? Which means getting to at least know the person you want to have sex with, just like earning the money to buy that chocolate bar. It would take a bit of time, but then you would have the right to enjoy it so much more, and you will not have that emotional damage to carry around with you. Wouldn't that be a much better world to live in? And it most certainly would go a long way in helping to protect from sexual assault, possibly picking up STDs from strangers. But this would also allow them to have healthy relationships, which will then make it so they are less damaged and less traumatized. As we know, it is those that are damaged and have trauma that are vulnerable and are most likely to become victims of sex trafficking or sexual assaults. The world is run by the law of supply and demand. So many have stood up and refused to buy anything that is produced from a sweatshop. We need to be that rigid on this topic as well and teach our youth that they do not have the right to ever buy or take sex when they have not earned it. Additionally, ensuring that we teach everyone the true meaning of consent, and we could eliminate sex trafficking. Now let's get into why. Why do these attackers get away with trafficking and abusing their victims? And this is a loaded question and the primary focus of my workshop today. One of the reasons traffickers can get away with this is because it just looks like a normal relationship. And I teach this on my monthly workshop, but we won't get into all of that. So unless the victim is willing to say that they are a victim and don't want to be there, how would anybody know otherwise? But the primary reason they get away with this is because of our preconceived ideas on this subject and who we think the victims are. As I stated in my preview to this workshop, stereotypically, we assume that a rape or sex trafficking victim is a homeless, a drug addict, an immigrant, a native, or any other visible minority. But the minute we use stereotypically in front of any of these people or events, we are minimizing the seriousness of what we're talking about. And in this case, if we see a sexual assault victim and we see they are an immigrant or a native, or if they are homeless, unfortunately, so many of us think, oh, well, that figures. And that immediately victimizes the person all over again. Why does the color of someone's skin or where they live give us the right to assume that they are going to be the likely victims of these crimes? Or worse yet, why do we turn our backs on them when we find out that one of these facts is what the victim is actually dealing with? And we not only turn our backs on them individually, but as a society as a whole. When someone deals with this on a daily basis, it's easy to get hardened to the fact that they are in fact victims. But those actions and judgments are victimizing them all over. The heartbreaking part of all of this is that we judge the victims more than we do the traffickers or the abusers. They can't seem to get out from under the weight of our judgments of them. They don't feel safe anywhere, so they don't feel like they have anyone to talk to. They know the system is flawed, and they are powerless to fix it. Additionally, there are many, including my daughter, who didn't even know what had happened to them. My daughter lived with the lie, thinking that somehow she had let this happen, that she had said yes, and that even though what she had said yes to was not what she expected, she still felt she couldn't back out of it. And with the threats that were over her son's life, she didn't see a way out. And when she did figure out a plan to leave, she still didn't know for over 8 years that she had in fact been trafficked. We need to fix this. Victims need to know they are victims, that it is not their fault, that what is happening to them is indeed wrong, and they can ask for help. And this is precisely why victims don't leave their traffickers, because they are in this vicious cycle, and the victims know they are looked at through this stereotypical lens, and or they believe that somehow it is their fault, especially if the crime was committed by someone they know. So why bother and try to get out of the cycle they're in? Why bother go to anyone, as they probably will just victimize them all over for a second time? I'm aware that as a certified family coach, I do not have the education or experience that a psychiatrist, therapist, or even a counselor might have in matters of the human mind, or why we do what we do, and all the ways that we may have emotional damage, or what can cause us to think a certain way. But as a mother of a victim who has both been raped and trafficked, I understand that sexual assault crimes leave someone devastated and doubting who they are and why it happened to them, and wondering what they did wrong, taking the blame on themselves. And here is what I really want you to walk away with today, and I am repeating myself because it's important, and that is that sexual assault crimes and abuse can happen to anyone, regardless of age, gender, culture, religion, or community that you live in. And that regardless of what they did or didn't do, it shouldn't have happened, and that it is not the victim's fault. And yet so many people in our society keep making the victim feel like it is. Even though the rape was reported, the police didn't believe my daughter's story, which started a spiral of events that then caused her to be trafficked. So I know firsthand the judgments that come from the law enforcement, and then the judgments that come from the medical doctors when she developed STDs that then caused her to have cervical cancer. And then the judgments that came from employees who looked at her when she walked in asking for an application with a young child and not much work experience. The looks, the criticism, the judgments that are all passed down, all without anyone giving her a chance to explain. Not once believing that maybe if she was in fact a victim that had been caused by this chain of events that she had to deal with, having limited resources being a single mom. All she was trying to do was to find a way to get her own independence and be a mom to her son, and to live as an adult on her own. And then slowly, meticulously, being victimized all over again by a trafficker who swooped into her life, stating he believed her story, that together they could find a way to be independent and make a life for themselves and for her son. Eventually, he used these dreams against her and exploited her vulnerabilities and threatened her son in order to keep her there and to comply. How she found the strength to leave on her own, even without knowing that she was in fact being trafficked, is a miracle. But she will say it is because she knew that we loved her no matter what. That coming back home was a solid option for her, although not her ideal plan. She understood that it was better than dealing with the control of a man who had no respect for her or her son, who only wanted to use her for his own gain. She tells us that the time she was sitting on our deck having a coffee with me and her dad, who was watering the grass not too far off, looked up and said, "You deserve better than him." It was a simple, truthful statement that caused our daughter to start to understand her own worth. It was the start of her understanding that she didn't need this man, nor all that he was putting her through. That although she wanted her independence so badly, which is why she followed this man, what she had to do nightly in order to keep her son safe was in fact a lie, and she had a way out and a safe place to come back to. However, this is the sad part. This all could have been prevented if the police had believed her when she reported the crime. If employees would have given her a chance to work and not assumed she would be a risk because she was a single young mom, and or if she had been able to feel worthy instead of feeling like white trash. Because she was being victimized by everyone all over again, she became very vulnerable and an easy target for the trafficker. So how do we overcome this? How do we offer hope when we live in a broken society, knowing that each individual has to help themselves in order to get out? Other than fixing our system, which is on us as adults, which since my daughter reported her rape, we have come a long way to understanding the effects of the victim. But we still need to be doing a lot more to fix this. And that's the first move. And a lot of people I was talking that were on the speaking today, that was the same kind of trend, and it was so good to hear. We do need to give every person a fresh start every single day. We've not only lost the art of having the grace to do that, but we've also actually become hardened ourselves. And then they feel like they have no rights. They don't know that they actually have another way of living. And it will take days, weeks, months, even years sometimes, in order to affect a person enough to allow them to understand that they can break that cycle and that they have a right to take their power back. And that is the hard part, knowing that this could take so long. And that is the part that we as a society don't know how to offer. It infringes on our rights. We don't have the time or energy to do it every single day. But if we would all just stop the judgments, that alone would be a big help. Stop assuming that a homeless person could change that if they wanted to, or a drug addict could stop it if they wanted to bad enough. And instead, let's look the drug addict or the homeless person in the eye. Talk to them. When you come across someone who looks beaten down, offer a word of encouragement. If we all did our part, to everyone we meet, can you imagine the power we would be giving back to them? And for those of us that have to deal with this, someone like this on a daily basis, with these destructive cycles, or who has been assaulted, please believe them, even if you find it highly unlikely that their story is true, and give them the courtesy to let them make the same mistakes over and over again without throwing it back in their face every single time. Give them the chance to know that their fate is in their hands and that you're not going to judge them for the bad choices they've made. And yes, it is a long, hard road, but if we all believe that no one should be treated like a slave, then we need to stop treating them like a slave to their cycles and or to their victimization. Give them a chance. We all do it, and we all have been affected by misconceived ideas or judgments that others have put on us, and we need to stop. So now let's paint a verbal picture to kind of describe what I'm talking about. There's a 15-year-old girl standing on the street corner, hungry, looking like she hadn't slept or eaten in days. She rifles through her backpack. She finds very little, but there's some pills, thank God. She needs something to take that edge off. She crosses the street to the park and heads to her favorite spot to hunker down for the night. As she's trying to get comfortable, she starts to reminisce about the days she was young, sleeping in a warm bed, eating at least twice a day, and not having to wonder if she would get stabbed in the middle of the night while someone stole her own possession, her backpack. Life had been good until he started coming into her room at night. And when she told her mom about it, her mom didn't believe her. She might still be there if he hadn't started hitting her as well and threatening even worse things if she told anyone about it. She knows having a roof over her head and food in her stomach are important, but she just couldn't stand the almost nightly visits anymore. Her older sister left home about 4 years earlier for the same reason, and had told her that she was sorry that she couldn't take her as well. She tried to get a job, but no one would give her a chance, saying that they didn't hire homeless girls. She'd lied about her mailing address, stating she was still living at home, but it didn't trick them. She was still attending school, but it was getting harder as she was so tired and hungry. Most of the other kids at school were starting to stare at her when she walked down the halls. She knew she was not very clean and probably smelled bad. She'd learned some great spots at the school where the kids were throwing out their lunches, and this was a bonus and one of the few reasons why she was still trying to stay in school. Occasionally, she would convince one of the other guys, if she let them do a sexual favor for her, that they would give her some pills. She needed them to help her sleep, or at least that was what it started out as, and it was what she was still trying to convince herself was the truth. One day there was a boy who offered to take her home for a good hot meal and a bed to sleep in if she would just have sex with him. She was so hungry and tired that she agreed without even giving it much thought. It would just be this one, just one meal, one good night's sleep. And now there is another 15 or 16-year-old girl whose mother walks through the door after a hard, stressful day at work and sees her daughter lying on the couch, shoes still on, smoking a joint, no homework done, the house is a mess, with a lot of the daughter's stuff just tossed down. No thought of even helping to clean up anything or to start dinner. The mother stands at the door, frustrated at her life, her work, and mostly at her daughter. She looks over at the daughter and says, "Really? Could you not have at least done your homework?" "You're such a stick in the mud," she says. "I'll get to it later. And by the way, I need some money so I can get some clothes and school supplies," is the daughter's reply. The mother loses it. She starts saying everything that is on her mind, even though she knows it's not wisdom to do so. The daughter's temper starts to escalate, and before long, bedroom doors are slamming. Both are swearing, and finally the daughter says, "If I'm not what you want, or you think your life would be better without me, then I'll leave." "I don't want you to leave," the mother yells back. "I just want you to start acting like a respectful child, and there are rules if you want to live here." "Fine, then I won't live here," the daughter states, irrationally, as she storms to her room and starts to throw things into a backpack. Tempers are high, and the mother knows she should stop this, but is uncertain how to do so, as she cannot give in and let the daughter keep on going down this path. Not doing so well at school, bad set of friends, won't help with anything, won't even keep her room even slightly tidy. The daughter storms out of the door, slamming it as she marches down the hallway to a truck that is sitting on the curb. After she gets in and starts to drive away down the street, the mother is wondering what just happened. The daughter had been seeing a new guy that she hadn't told her mother about. He was part of a new group of friends at school. He was cool with a cool truck and was always buying her things. He treated her like someone special. In her mind, she had just struck gold and she would not have to put up with her mother nagging her all the time. And best of all, she could come and go as she wanted and be free to do what she wants. Both stories show that if the stereotypical sex trafficking victims are homeless and or drug addicts or immigrants or have come from an abusive home, most times they're in a situation that is not of their own making, and they do not have the capacity on their own to make good decisions. But it is also true that a home can be a good home, no abuse, and the child has all the advantages that life can offer, and they can still be trafficked. The traffickers will find the victim's vulnerabilities. They will find the thing that the victim wants the most in their life, and they will do anything to meet that for them. And that is precisely how easy it is to get trafficked. So how do we find hope in this? As we will always have teens that will be rebellious and willful, independent, and will fight those that are trying to help them. And or probably we will always have those that are high risk factors due to abuse or immigration. How do we find hope today as a concerned citizen? How do we give our loved ones, the young people, hope? How do we give ourselves hope? How do we give anyone hope? Well, the answer is simple, but it will take time. The answer is we educate. We ensure that we learn what we can about sex trafficking, and we teach our kids age-appropriate consent. And we do that by literally getting out there and trying to find out as much information we can. And then we do everything we can to stop judging people. Stop putting them in this hourglass or in our image of what we think a sex trafficking or a sexual abuse person might look like. But we do have the power to help them. We have to help them learn to see that life can be cruel sometimes, and we are obligated to help them through it. Even strangers, we should be doing all we can to take a few moments when we see somebody to encourage them. Find something to let them know that you see value in them. Imagine what it would do to someone you knew who is feeling worthless because she has done things she never thought she would do, or you sense that she has been abused in some way, or if you just notice that they have a very low self-esteem, if you were to tell her that her eyes are beautiful and that you see warmth and kindness in her, it will stun her at first, and she might even fluff it off, but she will remember what you said, and it will always come back to her mind when she needs it, when she's struggling with her self-worth. She will remember this. Not all victims have the safety net to go back to. Although most are not locked in rooms or being held against their will with chains or ropes, they are being held by their tormentors in psychological ways. They are being held by the lack of self-worth and not believing that anybody will believe them. Traffickers have brainwashed the victims to believe that they are the only ones that can or will provide their everyday basic needs. And the victim starts to believe that they can't go home. The trafficker convinces the victims that no one else will take care of them like they do. No one else will love them like they do, especially after the trafficker tells her family and friends some of the things the victim has done. So for most victims, it is low self-esteem and shame that keeps them in chains. When someone feels they can't go home or they have no other place to go, they begin to believe the lies. And then they begin to believe that there really is no one else there that will put a roof over their head. It all boils down to the simple fact that they believe that because of what they've done, that no one will ever love them again. Their self-worth has been stripped from them, and they truly believe that no one wants them around and that we are ashamed or embarrassed of them. We all need to do what we can to help prevent this from happening to anyone we know and love. We need to be teaching the next generation that no one has the right to buy, sell, or take anything from anyone without permission. We need to start teaching them to respect themselves enough to not let anyone take anything from them. Teach them to have a right to use their voice, to say no. They have a right to decide who, when, and where they have sex, and that no one should be forcing themselves on them. This is called mutual respect, and we have lost the art of teaching it. We are more concerned about ourselves and what makes us happy than about what gives other people pleasure. We need to teach the next generation that it is better to ensure that everyone is being taken care of and respected, and that regardless of their past, what they've done, they are human beings that deserve love and another chance. We need to realize the victims of sex crimes, no matter who they are, they have a right to be heard. They have a right to be believed. They deserve for all of us to fight for those rights, because it can happen to anyone. It's really important that we keep on educating ourselves, keep on caring. Let's do all we can to help those victims and ourselves take our power back. Because the truth is, prevention is easier than rescue, and we need to get that message out there. We're going to end by watching a video.
Let's talk about human trafficking. Why? Why would you want to be aware of human trafficking or sex trafficking? This has nothing to do with you or me. Well, this crime is becoming the fastest growing crime in Canada. The average age of recruitment into the sex trade in Canada is 12 to 14 years old. 92% of victims of human trafficking actually knew their trafficker. As a multi-billion-dollar industry, human trafficking is more lucrative than guns or drugs. Traffickers resell their victims over and over, making considerable money for themselves at the expense of their prey. Sex trafficking can happen to anyone, regardless of age, culture, income, orientation, gender, or neighborhood. Traffickers find their young victims online, at school, at malls, parties, libraries, even bus stops. Trafficking can occur in your home, with young people sending sexual texts and images with their cell phones or performing in front of their computers for profit. Exploited right in their own bedrooms. So who are these victims? Are they people who just made bad choices? Are they wayward kids who got what they deserved? Are they addicts who don't want a better life? No. These are vulnerable human beings. They are someone's kids. They have names. They have people who miss them terribly. They are victims of criminals who have no regard for the life that they are exploiting. When you see or think of these victims, give them a name. Give them your child's name, your grandchild's name. Imagine for one painful moment what it must be like to live in fear, in violence, addicted to drugs because of your abuser, living without hope, not really living at all. Liberating these young people is very difficult because of the high degree of control the trafficker holds over them. Control through drug addiction, threats of physical violence, threats against their loved ones, blackmail, or financial dependency. Many, may never break free. But we can do everything possible to make sure other kids, boys, girls, teens, and young adults don't get caught up in this horror. This doesn't mean we have to live in fear of human trafficking, but rather we need to live in awareness of human trafficking and how it happens, where it happens, and who it could happen to. And then we take action to stop it, protecting a young person, a child, a grandchild, a niece, a nephew. So, as it turns out, human trafficking does have something to do with you and me. Don't look away.
All right, that ends the presentation part, but now we have questions and answers. We have a few minutes left.
Thank you so much, Lynda. My heart is heavy just hearing your daughter's story and even what your family has gone through. But you really honed in on a point that resonated with me, that a chain of action that could have been broken many, many times by, it could have been anyone that could have broken that chain. So thank you so much for sharing your daughter's story. We do have a comment from Shelley Tarnowski, actually our keynote speaker. She wants to say to you, thank you for this important information. Education such as this is so key. Just have the courage to have these conversations and address the topic. Don't ignore the topic and think that it doesn't pertain to you, because it does. The more we get in front and educate young people and their parents, the more we prevent human trafficking and victimization in general. More understanding and less judgment. So key. Thank you so much. We have had an enormous amount of thank yous and how powerful your presentation has been today. I don't have any further questions unless Marcus, you would like to ask a question. But Marcus, let me know if you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I don't have any questions, but a lot of positive feedback. This has really touched a lot of people. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, and we do have a hard stop at 4 p.m., but I just wanted to let you know that Lynda's information is in our exhibit booth. And also Lynda has provided not only her YouTube channel, but her website for more information. And I'm sure there's a ton of information for parents, caregivers, friends, family. We should be able to tap in and get this information. And like you mentioned, it's just a matter of being observant as well and asking questions and recognizing the individual for who they are and the strengths that they have. The signs are all there. We see it all the time, especially on social media. So we have to protect our kids as well. I think that is really, really important. Who's on the other end of that screen? Know and vet your children's following and network, that they're growing, that they may not even know that person at all. Lynda, did you want to close? We do have 5 minutes if you want to close with anything further. If not, then we thank you so much.
No, I said a lot. I could always say more. It's a passionate subject for me. No, I hope I got the message across that really anybody can be a victim. And the only way we're going to stop victimization is to start focusing on the crime, not the victim.
Yes. So please connect with Lynda on the platforms, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. Are there in the exhibit booth? We have all your platforms there, but you're on where else are you on other than LinkedIn and Instagram?
I'm on YouTube. YouTube is and YouTube and my website both are called parentwithpurpose.ca. If you want to email me, it's the same, parentwithpurpose.ca@gmail.com. So there's many ways to get in touch with me, and I'm here to help. So if people have questions even after today. I'm going to be on the road for the next week, but I will have my cell phone with me, so I'll still be able to reach out, just not as quickly as normal. But please feel free, because that's my heart, is to help parents or anybody who has anything to do with kids ages 2 to 25 learn what they need to learn to protect their kids.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. And like I said, you had enormous thank yous online here that we're really appreciative of your talk today. Thank you, Lynda. Take care.
Very much.
And thank you everyone for joining us today. Have a good evening.